And you've just heard Twilight Sleep, the debut single from Idiogram, which is out now. And I'm delighted to be joined by Ali, Leslie, Alistair, Keith from the band. Hello, guys.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi. Thanks for having us.
It's an absolute pleasure. And first of all, what can you tell us about Twilight Sleep?
Twilight Sleep is the first song we ever wrote together some time ago. It's a kind of journey between lots of different, slightly disparate musical elements. The name itself comes from a particularly nasty concoction that was given to women in labour. When was it given to women in labour up till? I'm not sure.
I don't know, 60s, I think.
60s, to essentially zonk them out. And so Twilight Sleep was the name of the state that they were assumed to be in.
Wow, that is really interesting, because you think, when you first hear it, you go, yeah, there's a dreamlike state going on there, but that's really quite nasty.
It's much darker.
Yeah. And
so I think the name came after the song was, what was it? Was it before or after? I can't remember.
I think the name came halfway through.
Yeah.
I think the name came halfway through.
And there's a spoken word sample on it. What's that taken from, if you don't mind telling me?
That is a spoken word sample from a woman called Amanda Fielding, who you may or may not have heard of. I think she has a seat in the House of Lords, perhaps. You want to fact check me on that. But she is sort of like of the sort of aristocracy. They have a big sort of house out near us in East Lothian. She has a Gosford House. And she is like a sort of she campaigns on a platform of sort of decriminalization of drugs and experimental use of drugs in sort of like just treating the human condition, I guess. And she has one of her things that she's really invested some research in, I guess, is a thing called trepanation, which is where you drill a small hole in your head, and it changes sort of like your internal pressure balance and things like that. And I've never done it, so I can't really comment. But she believes
I'd like
that,
to be clear, I don't think I'm ever going to do it. I'm pretty certain. I'll
like,
go on
I think the sample in the song's as close as all of us will get to it. But
so the sample is her talking a little bit about that and what her experience of that is and why she believes that that is beneficial, which ties in really nicely with like the whole sort of like idea of like this medical like state of being this induced sort of like alternative state, I guess.
That's why I love doing these interviews, because you get answers you just wouldn't otherwise. When you said trepanation, I think, is that not the drilling of holes?
Yeah,
no, it can't be that, but I absolutely know exactly what you're talking about.
I don't think any of us are in any particular support of this practice.
No. It's good to have that disclaimer out there, I think, for everyone.
Just the overall mood of it, somebody talking, I'm going to, stretch a little bit and say somebody who's on the sort of intellectual fringes, shall we say, with an idea that's outside the accepted norm, that kind of strange wobble. You don't quite know how to take somebody when they speak to you about something that's like this, like that. That kind of effect on you, I think, was quite nice in the midst of this track. So, yeah, more of a mood piece.
Yeah, totally. Because like she's super researched, she's super intelligent.
Yeah.
She's not just like spouting like absolutely like mad nonsense. Like she's informed, but it's so like disconnected from how like we would like anything that we would really consider experiencing, that it gives you this really weird internal sense of like, this can't possibly be right. But she seems to know what she's talking about,
And why choose that then for this track? Because as you say, is it because it kind of links into medical theme as well?
I think, like I say, for me, it was more of a mood thing. When we write music, we're constantly playing with that thing of writing something which is accessible, but also adding this element of discomfort to it as well. There's pieces, I think Hyperaccumulator probably falls into this more than Twilight Sleep, but some of the sounds, patches, things we're doing with the music are definitely difficult to listen to, and the sample falls into that category for me as well. So yeah, it aligns in that sense, I think. I don't know if you have anything else to say on that.
Yeah, and I think there's something, really about like the quality of her voice and the way that she speaks, like sort of really appeals to us in like, just like a sonic sort of like sense, and we feel like that works really nicely with like the vibe of it. It is, it's half that's what she's saying, but actually like half of it, or even like for me, I would say the more important part of it is like the tone of it, the shape of it, like the cadence of it, like
Yeah, the weird cadence for sure. I think we accentuated the strange cadences with the particular ensemble effects on that, didn't we?
yeah. And it's really cool because like it's like hyper local to us as well, and it's really nice to just explore like like those little pockets that you exist in, I think sometimes.
And there's a video as well, isn't there, to accompany it, which has got a kind of fits in what we've been talking about, a slightly psychedelic feel. Was that deliberate? How did you approach doing a video, and who did it with you?
We gave Jess, who made the video, complete free rein, actually. So she heard the song, and we asked her if she wanted to make a video, and it was entirely up to her. So the sort of that she did bring that sort of, I think there's certainly some sort of AI evolving kind of elements to it that you've seen in some videos recently that give that kind of endless zooming in feel, which is quite uncanny to look at. So she sort of she arrived at that conclusion herself, and that's the video she decided to make. And we all really, really like it. It's it acts as a kind of glue, I think, to some of the bits of the piece that are, there's quite a lot of eras to the piece as it goes through. So it really sort of ties them together in a way we didn't quite know that it needed.
I think they gave her a color palette. I think that might have been the extent of the boundary box.
Well, we didn't really. We sort of like after she'd started it, we made some artwork for it and we gave her that, and then she sort of tied some elements of that in. But other than that, we went, well, this is the song, this is the name of the song, this is what the name of the song means. Like, have at it. A lot of our sort of thing is like our process internally is like super collaborative. Like there's no one is like, like the lead writer or like, the lead ideas generator or the person that either says yes or no to stuff. There's none of that in this group. And our sort of philosophy, like, is like that we take that outwards as well, so that when we work with someone, and we only pick people to work with that like we think, will understand what we're doing as musicians or as people. It's part of the premise is like we trust them and their creativity to go away and do something that we could never do or would never do or wouldn't even think of, and I think that's like super cool for just like creativity, just the process, just that level of trust. And she really we think she nailed it really. It's great.
Yeah, I don't think it's anything that any of us would come up with, by ourselves. And yet it's something that we think really kind of complements the music. And to come up with that independently is super interesting.
And this is the first release from an album, which is coming out next year, I think. Is that an indicator of what the album as a whole will sound like, or is there a lot more going on there? I know there will be, but what I mean? Is this kind of indicator of the sound?
That's we had a lot of trouble, I think, picking the song that would be the first single, because that's what you want a first single to do. It's like, here's the taste, or perhaps the best indicator of what the album is. But the problem is they're all so different that none of them could be. So I think we just picked the one that had the most straightforward pace and straightforward, or sort of homogeneous mood. But they are all very different, I would say.
Yeah, we picked the one that was mostly in 4/4.
And Leslie, you spoke about the band being a collaboration of equals. So how difficult is that? Those kind of decisions, are they quite difficult to come to, or actually, do you work together and say, yeah, we come to this decision, easily?
I think it very much depends on the occasion. There's some things that one person will bring, and all of a sudden we're like, yes, that's the thing. But equally, there's kind of times when someone might bring some idea and it's not quite right for that particular context, and so it'll kind of sit for a while, and it might well appear somewhere else. So one of the other tracks that we have on the album is kind of two bits that they come from very different places, but when you put them together, they kind of give a bit more context to the other one.
Yeah, I think, and I think we all sort of regularly try to sort of check our egos, like at all times, I can't speak for anything else, but when something comes up and internally you go, oh no, it's just being aware of that sensation and going, well, what's that about? Let's set that aside and see what else comes. And quite often I think when you do that, you create that space for the acceptance of another idea. And I think that we sort of often find our way to a center point or a middle ground by sort of just doing that, just embracing each other's thoughts and opinions and suggestions and ideas. And even if we follow something down a road and end up turning back, it's really nice to sort of just explore all those things. And I think that we're sort of collectively quite just open to doing that.
There's a method
that's pretty nice.
Oh, sorry, Liz.
No, I'm done.
There's a word we used to use back in the early days. So when we were in the early parts, I won't say how many years ago, of writing the material for this album in Leslie's old sort of farmhouse in East Lothian. There's this method of assemblage came forward. So we'd always have a part here, an idea there, somebody have a guitar line or a rhythm or something, and we'd expand it into a bit, and then trying to work out how we can possibly assemble these into coherent bits of music. I actually think from Twilight Sleep that the harmonic bit in the middle, you have the linking section, Gillis, was one of the last bits to come in. We had the heavy riff section towards the end, we had the atmospheric bit, we had the drum and bassy intro. We didn't have something that could stitch it all together. And I think I think I have a method for this, and we all went, oh. And we go into the rehearsal room, and then there it was. So yeah, assemblage is the trick. And sometimes we pull it off. I think our Google Drive overfloweth.
Yeah, the pile of ideas that are not yet songs is probably a lot larger than the pile of songs, but that's okay.
That is okay.
You're hinting that this album has been a long time coming, and would that be the case?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, indeed. Maybe. Yeah. Yeah, it's so we played our first gig. We played probably about 5.5 years ago, and and we'd spent some time writing material before that. And the sort of the premise of this band was, let's just get together and make some music and then figure out what we want to do with it. So we sort of started the band without any real agenda or any real sort of ambitious drive to achieve things other than creating some music that we wanted to create. And so we've just we've just taken our time about it. We've not applied any pressure to ourselves to get things done, because we don't want it to feel like a chore or something we have to do, or a job. It's we're doing this because we want to be doing it. And I think we've been quite wary of trying to accelerate ourselves through things, because it just creates sort of expectation or stress and things. And of course we got pandemicked, and and there was the arrival of some children, and it's just
numerous health problems that are come and gone as well.
Yeah, it's just we've just done it the slow way.
Yeah, with real life getting in the way, I can imagine. But what you've got, and I don't know whether it's as a result of playing for this time from what I've heard, the 2 tracks, is a really tight sound. And I can imagine it being huge live. I might be wrong about that. That's in my head, that's how it would be. But how do you record? Are you all in one space, or what's the process?
Well, we recorded at Chamber Studio, which was then in Granton, and now is out in East Lothian with Graham. And I'd say it was a fairly standard recording process in terms of the way we went at it, starting with drums and bass, and then everything else gets laid on top. So we went in there with the songs in a certain state. And I think one of Graham's questions that stayed with me is like, guys, do you want to make a live album, which would be, everything you can all play at the same time, which has a sound and is a way to go, or do you want to make an album, which is where you really lean into the studio process and embrace the fact that you might be overdubbing quite a bit. So the state that the songs were in when we came in the process was not what we ended up with on the album. And I suppose our challenge since is that how much of that extra special stuff we did in the recording process, how much of that can we now take back into the live playing?
We have this habit of saying yes to absolutely everything. Even in our writing process, someone goes, should we do this? And then we all go, yeah, we should do that. And then we lean in and we lean in and we lean in. So that, I think there when Graham said, should I feel him like he went, should I go for it? Should I do a lot of stuff? Should I do my thing? And we're like, yes, you should. We'll figure it out later.
Yeah, and that's, part of that sort of collaborative process as well, like Graham's, we wrote the music, but Graham's creativity, is also all over that record. And if it was someone else that we went and made the record with, it would sound like a really different album. So I just, he's got to get some credit for that sort of final sound as well.
I think that's something that listeners to music who, don't think about the process of making an album or recording at all, often forget, is that it's not just the band, that there are other people involved in the process as well, and that can have a real effect on the sound. Mentioned playing live. What would people expect from an Idiogram live show?
4 people looking like they're going to have a nervous breakdown on the stage, perhaps.
In a geometrically perfect arc.
Well, we're trying to. There's this thing of instrumental bands where there's kind of at least for your average person, there's a bit of a gap where vocals would take you on a narrative journey. So for the album launch gig, we're going to try and collaborate with a live visual artist, just kind of add that element that's happening behind us. So yeah, I think the live show we're hoping will be as collaborative as the process has been so far. Just inviting people who are making interesting visuals that we like to collaborate on the live performance with us.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, for us as well, we're we're working on that stage, nothing is easy for us up there. It's sort of, we kind of look like we're 4 people on the stage with drums, bass, piano, guitar. But actually, we're all actually doing several things at the same time, that you can't really see to sort of create all those atmospheres and all those layers on the album. We're not playing to a backing track. We're not playing to a click. Everything we do, we're generating live, and that's absolutely layers and layers and layers and layers of things.
That was a design choice too, right? We had a discussion about it. It was okay, should we do some of this in the backing track to make our lives easier? No. So each of us has got at least one piece of electronics to, in some cases, quite a lot more, Leslie, piece of electronics. So there's a lot of that. There's quite a lot of eyeline stuff to make sure everyone is comfortable and knows where they are. Yeah.
There's not it's not we're not safe up there. Do you know what I mean?
And it's a
high wire act that's going on.
It is.
I introduced you at the very beginning, but nobody will know who plays what. So, who's what do you play, each of you? on stage and on the record?
Don't know. Start at the bottom of the drums.
Yeah, I play a drum kit and a bit of a sampler for some layers and things.
I play bass. I also have some sub bass effects, and I also run it into a laptop to create slightly more ethereal delay sort of tones. So it's kind of three voices in one.
And a very large pedal board.
Always.
So I play the guitar, and again, there's a kind of second route to that does more kind of atmospheric things with the electronics as well.
Yeah, and I play piano and synths. So I'm sort of like playing piano as a piano really, and then I'm running a lot of MIDI from a second controller keyboard and a piano through a program called Mainstage, and using that to add sort of digital layers in, like, and to turn on different sounds and effects on and off, like with some foot pedals and things. And the result, like, of all of these things combined should be like, it should sound like there's 15 people on that stage.
Yeah, I can imagine that there's a lot going on. And in a moment, we're going to hear Hyperaccumulator, which I want to thank you for sending it over and, allowed me to play it. But before that, I was wondering about, you mentioned a live gig hopefully coming up soon, but that's been slightly delayed, is that right? So that's still to come.
Sadly so, yes.
Yes, we've had to postpone from what would have been the 9th of November to, we're looking at sometime in March. Yes, we got caught up in the woes of Summer Hall, unfortunately, and we thought postponing was the right choice.
So, because I was going to ask you about future plans, but I guess that kind of is the future plan, and then you're working towards that. Well, what we can hopefully do then is get you back on roughly about the time of the launch, and we can talk about the album more fully, and we can talk about a bit more about the band in general, because there's a lot to go through. But just before we finish, I'm very interested in the influences on the band. Are they shared influences? Are you all coming with something different?
Some shared, I think.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I think, we're all in the band together because, like, we share a musical common ground. Like, there's a point in that Venn diagram where we all meet.
Yeah.
But I think each of us individually are all also bringing something that is, like, unique to our personal tastes, like, into that as well. And, and I think that's how we've sort of ended up with such a sort of, like, I don't know, we struggle to define what sort of music we're making. If someone goes, hey, what sort of music are you making? We go, well, it's kind of a bit like this, but also a little bit of this. And then there's some bits of this, and then some elements of this with some, like, sprinkles on top of this other thing. And I think it just reflects, like, us all coming as individuals to do, like, a thing that's, like, in the middle.
I'm just going to strike that question from the list now.
I mean, do you want to hear some band names? Is that what you're up for?
No, absolutely. You don't have to, because I think actually I've been thinking about it after I asked that question, and actually that's kind of up to people like me to go, well, it's maybe a little bit like this, or it sounds a bit like that. Perhaps you go, well, it's, we make the music, you decide in some sense, unless anyone wants to throw in something really odd that I wouldn't expect as an influence.
No, we would love someone else to tell us what we're making.
Yeah.
Please tell us.
When we play the tracks on the radio show, then maybe I'll throw in a couple of things that might sound like that. Guys, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. It's been an absolute pleasure. I love what I've heard so far, and I can't wait to hear the whole album. So thanks again.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank
you.
Thanks for having us.
We really appreciate it.
And this is Idiogram and Hyperaccumulator.